Sometimes we know a story matters before it asks for attention, not because it is loud, but because it arrives already decided, carrying the weight of paperwork and silence. Cassandra Moore's story began that way quietly, and without warning. This is where she begins. I woke to the sound before I understood it. Not frantic, not angry. 3 measured knocks that felt official. My phone screen glowed 6:18 a.m., and I was already sitting up, heart working faster than my thoughts. I pulled on a sweatshirt and walked down the hall. Careful the way you get careful when you have learned that panic leaves a record. Through the peephole. A uniform filled the frame. Tan shirt, dark vest, clipboard held steady. A patrol car sat at the curb with its lights off. I opened the door with the chain still on. "Good morning, ma'am. Cassandra Moore." That was not a question. "Yes, I'm Deputy Lucas Nguyen with the Larimer County Sheriff's Office. I'm here to execute a writ of possession." The words landed cleanly. No drama, no pause. "This order authorizes same-day possession," he continued. "The deadline is 11:45 a.m. I looked past him, down the street. My parents stood near their car across the road, close enough to see, far enough not to speak. My mother's arms were folded. My father's hands were in his pockets. They looked finished. "This house is mine." "I'm not here to determine ownership," the deputy said. "I'm here to enforce a court order." We noticed how she didn't raise her voice. We noticed how she didn't ask for time. I nodded once. "May I see the paperwork?" He angled the pages toward me. My name was printed there like I had missed something obvious. I stepped back inside, closed the door gently, and slid the deadbolt into place. Then I took out my phone and started taking photos. Clear ones. I wasn't packing. I was building a record. If this story resonates, you already know why it's being told. I sat at the kitchen table with my phone in my hand and the photos lined up on the screen. Page after page. The court seal. The case number. My name, clean and official, like I had agreed to something I never saw. The deputy knocked once. Lighter this time. "I need to ask," he said through the door. "Do you have somewhere you can go if this proceeds?" "I'm not going anywhere," I answered. "Not until I understand what this is." When I opened the door again, the chain still on, he held the packet steady. I leaned in and read, "Unlawful detainer. Plaintiffs, Victor Moore and Elaine Moore. Basis tenant holding over." I felt my jaw lock. Tenant. He didn't react. "That's what the filing states. This house was left to me by my grandfather." I said, "It's recorded. I can't address ownership." He replied, "Only the order." Across the street, my mother called out, voice soft and careful. "Cass, this didn't have to be hard. I didn't look at her." "When was I served?" The deputy checked a page. "Service was completed 12 days ago. Substitute service." "At what address?" 742 Juniper Loop." "That isn't my address." He paused. "It's the address listed?" I nodded. Slow. The room felt smaller. Not panicked. Focused. "Thank you for holding the papers," I said. "I need to document everything." He stepped back and waited. I kept taking pictures. Every line, every lie. After the deputy stepped back onto the porch, the house went quiet in a way that felt deliberate. I spread the pages across the table and read them again. Slower this time. The language wasn't dramatic. That was the point. It sounded settled. Substitute service completed by a private process server. I picked up the phone and called the number on the filing. It rang twice. Process Service Solutions. "My name is Cassandra Moore. I'm calling about case 86412. I said. "You filed a proof of service." A pause. Paper moving. "Yes, ma'am. Delivered 12 days ago. To whom?" "Adult female at the listed address." "Describe her." Another pause. "Medium height, dark hair, claimed to reside there. That address belongs to my parents." I said, I don't live there. He cleared his throat. Ma'am, I can only confirm what was reported. You didn't ask for identification. Silence. Then, quieter. We don't always get cooperation. I hung up without arguing. Across the street, my father shifted his weight, checked his watch. My mother leaned toward him, whispering something I couldn't hear. The pieces lined up too cleanly. Someone had decided speed mattered more than truth. A hired signature, a checked box, a court that never saw my face. I picked up the deed from the drawer and laid it beside the writ. One document said I owned the house. The other said I didn't belong in it. The deputy's voice came through the door again. Ms. Moore, I need to confirm you understand the timeline. I understand. I replied, I'm going to the courthouse. He nodded once. That's the right move. I gathered the papers into a folder, careful with the edges, like they might cut. I grabbed my keys in the small fireproof pouch from the drawer by the sink, the one that held the boring things people don't think about until they're cornered. Deed copy, probate distribution, property tax bill in my name, insurance declarations page. At the door, the deputy checked his watch. The order authorizes possession before 11:45 a.m., he reminded me. Not unkind, not flexible. I know, I replied. I'm filing an emergency stay. He nodded once. If you get one, call the civil unit immediately. Across the street. My mother stepped forward. Cass, you're overreacting. This is just paperwork. I didn't turn toward her. You filed an unlawful detainer against me. My father spoke this time, voice low. You left us no choice. I slid the folder into my bag and pulled the door closed behind me. The lock clicked. Solid. Familiar. The deputy moved aside to clear the walkway. Good luck, he said, quieter now. I walked to my car without looking back. The engine hesitated before catching, like it always did on cold mornings. I checked the time again. 6:43 a.m. There was enough time, not for fear. For filing. The courthouse doors unlocked at 7:30. I was already there, standing with my bag at my feet, watching the security guard sip from a paper cup like this was any other morning. At the civil counter, a clerk slid the glass open just enough. How can I help you? I need to file an emergency stay of execution, I said. There's a writ of possession scheduled for this morning. Her fingers paused over the keyboard. Case number. I read it from the photo on my phone. She typed, frowned slightly, then nodded. You'll need to file a motion to vacate the default judgment as well. I have proof of ownership, I told her, sliding the deed and probate papers under the glass. She scanned them, slower now. And you weren't served. Not at my address. She exhaled. Not dramatic. Just tired. Fill these out. I sat at a narrow table and wrote carefully. No rushing. No shaking. When I handed the forms back, the clerk stamped them and disappeared through a door behind the counter. I waited. Shoes passed. Voices echoed. Somewhere. A printer whined. She returned and slid a single page toward me. The judge signed a temporary stay. She said, Enforcement is paused pending a hearing. My phone buzzed as I stepped outside. The deputy answered on the first ring. I have a stay, I said. I'm sending it now. Received. He replied a moment later. We're standing down. I sat on the courthouse steps for a second longer than necessary, the paper warm in my hands. The hearing room smelled faintly of coffee and paper. I sat at the table with my folder closed, hands flat, listening to my parents' attorney shuffle documents like he was buying time. Your Honor, he began. The plaintiffs would like to submit an additional exhibit. Judge Grant glanced up. Go ahead. He stood and walked the paper forward. A quitclaim deed, recorded 9 days ago. My mother didn't look at me. She folded her hands and kept them there. My father stared straight ahead, jaw set. The judge scanned the first page. This purports to transfer ownership from Cassandra Moore back to Victor and Elaine Moore. That's correct, the attorney said. The property was voluntarily conveyed. I leaned forward. I did not sign that. The attorney turned slightly. Polite. Ms. Moore. The deed was notarized. A woman seated behind them shifted in her chair. She wore a gray blazer and held a black notebook against her chest. Judge Grant nodded toward her. You're the notary. Yes, she answered. Rebecca Shaw. Did you notarize this document? I did. My mouth went dry, but my voice stayed even. What identification was used? Rebecca hesitated, then opened the notebook. A Colorado driver's license. I slid my wallet onto the table and pushed it forward. This is my current license. The judge compared them. The number doesn't match what's listed in the journal. That's because it's an older license, I said. It was reported lost and voided. The replacement was issued before that date. My mother finally looked at me. You're making this bigger than it needs to be. I met her gaze. You recorded a deed in my name. The room went quiet, not tense, watchful. Judge Grant closed the file and looked at the notary again. We'll come back to this. Judge Grant set the deed aside and looked back at me. You're denying this transfer. Yes, I said, and I can show where I was that day. She motioned with her pen. Go on. I opened the folder and slid the first page forward. This is my badge access log from work. It shows entry at 12:32 p.m. The attorney leaned in. Badge access doesn't prove presence. Cards get shared. I pushed the next page out. This is the parking gate record. My car entered the garage at 12:27 and didn't exit until after 1:18. The judge nodded once. Continue. I added the last sheet. And this is the camera log from the front turnstile. Facial recognition. It timestamps me entering the building and remaining inside. Rebecca shifted in her seat. Her notebook slipped a little. Then she caught it. Judge Grant turned to her. What time did you notarize the deed? Rebecca swallowed. Around 12:40. The judge looked back down at the papers. Your journal lists 12:40 p.m. Yes. I didn't move. At 12:40, I was inside a restricted lab. No exits, no gaps. The attorney stood. Your Honor, even if the timing is tight, that doesn't negate the notarization. Judge Grant raised her hand. Sit. He sat. She leaned forward, eyes on Rebecca now. When you notarize a document, you are required to witness the signer execute it. Yes. And verify valid identification. Yes. The room held still. I could hear the hum of the lights. Judge Grant asked again. Slower. Did you witness Cassandra Moore sign this deed in your presence? Rebecca's mouth opened, closed. She glanced toward my parents. My mother's fingers tightened together. No, Rebecca said quietly. I didn't. My father exhaled through his nose. The attorney stared at the table. Judge Grant didn't react. She wrote something on the pad in front of her, then looked up. Thank you for your answer. I felt the tension ease in my shoulders, not relief exactly, more like the ground settling back into place. The judge turned a page. We'll address the remaining issues. Judge Grant adjusted the stack of papers in front of her. The movement was small, but the room shifted with it. The default judgment is vacated, she said. The writ of possession is dissolved effective immediately. My mother's breath caught. Not loud. Just enough to notice. The unlawful detainer is dismissed, the judge continued, for improper service and lack of standing. The attorney stood halfway, then sat back down when she didn't look up. Judge Grant turned to my parents. This court is referring the quitclaim deed to the district attorney for investigation of forgery and fraudulent conveyance. My father finally moved. He leaned toward his lawyer and whispered something I couldn't hear. The lawyer shook his head once. The judge's voice stayed level. Ms. Shaw, your notary commission will be reviewed by the appropriate authority. You are excused. Rebecca gathered her notebook with both hands and stood. She didn't look at anyone as she walked out. Judge Grant looked back at me. Ms. Moore, You'll obtain certified copies of today's orders and record them with the county. A fraud alert should be placed on the property. I understand, I said. She nodded. If there are further attempts to remove you from the property, contact law enforcement immediately. My mother started to speak. The judge raised one finger. No. The bailiff opened the door. Papers slid, chairs shifted. The room emptied in quiet pieces. In the hallway, my parents passed me without stopping. My father's jaw was tight. My mother's eyes stayed forward, like if she didn't look. None of it counted. I waited until they were gone before I exhaled. Not relief. Just air, finally allowed back in. I went home alone. The house looked the same as it had the morning everything cracked open. Same front steps, same door. I changed the lock anyway, slow and careful, listening to the click settle into place. Inside, I set the certified copies on the table, then slid them into a folder and put it in the drawer where I keep things that matter. The phone rang once that evening. My mother's name lit the screen. I let it go dark. I made tea and stood by the window while it cooled, watching the light fade across the living room floor. There wasn't relief exactly, no rush, just the absence of pressure, the kind that lets your shoulders drop without you noticing. Later. I walked through each room, touching the door frames the way I used to when I first moved in. I said my grandfather's name out loud once. Not as a thank you, just to hear it sit in the space. This didn't make me stronger. It made me clearer about what I keep, about what I don't chase anymore. Cassandra Moore doesn't need permission to stay where she belongs. I turned off the lights and went to bed early. Sleep came without argument. We stayed quiet when the house did. Some stories don't end with noise or celebration. They end when the record closes, and the person inside it finally gets to rest.